In the dusty cradle of the Oklahoma Panhandle, where the wind whispered secrets through the tall grasses and the sun hung like a golden medallion in a sky vast enough to swallow a man's regrets, young Eliza Hawthorne stood frozen at the edge of the world. It was the summer of 1932, and at 16, she was the preacher's daughter, prim in her starched calico dress, her chestnut hair pinned back like a prayer she couldn't quite utter. But today, no hymns could steady her trembling hands. Before her loomed Thunder, the wild mustang her father had bartered for in a desperate bid to save the family farm, a beast of rippling black muscle and eyes like storm clouds, snorting defiance at the corral fence. Eliza had dreamed of riding him, of feeling the wind in her hair as she galloped across the plains to fetch the doctor for her ailing mother. Yet now, face to face with his untamed spirit, fear coiled in her belly like a rattlesnake ready to strike. She reached out a hand, her fingers inches from his velvet muzzle, and whispered, "Please, just once, let me be brave." That's when he appeared, like a thunderhead rolling in from the horizon. Boone, the giant, Caldwell, the towering cowboy who drifted into Willow Creek a month prior, all 6'8" of him clad in weathered denim and a Stetson that sat low over eyes the color of aged whiskey. Folks said he was half horse himself, with hands calloused from roping steers bigger than most men's egos and a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. He wasn't from these parts. Whispers pegged him as a former Rough Rider, scarred by the Great War's mud and madness, now wandering the dust bowls in search of something he couldn't name. Eliza had seen him from afar, mending fences at the edge of town, his shadow stretching long enough to eclipse the setting sun. But she'd never spoken to him. Until now. "Miss Hawthorne," Boone drawled, his boots crunching the parched earth as he approached, leading a lariat coiled like a sleeping serpent. He towered over her, yet there was no menace in his stance, only a quiet gentleness that belied his size. Thunder nickered at his presence, ears flicking forward as if greeting an old friend. "Heard your pa talkin', in church, 'bout miracles. Reckon this here's one waitin' to happen. But you look like you're fastened down the devil hisself." Eliza's cheeks flushed crimson, her gaze dropping to the ground where sagebrush clawed at her sensible shoes. I want to learn, Mr. Caldwell. For Mama. The doctor's miles away, and with the drought killin' the crops, we can't afford a wagon no more. But Thunder, he's too much. Too wild. Pa says I'm too fragile, like one of his china teacups from the old country. Her voice cracked, tears pricking her eyes. Fragile. The word stung worse than any thorn. In a town where men broke their backs plowing barren fields and women stitched hope from threadbare quilts, Eliza had always been the good girl, the one who sang solos in the choir, who mended neighbors' socks without a word of complaint. But beneath it all, she carried a secret shame, the fear that had rooted in her heart since she was 12, when her brother Tommy had been thrown from a pony and never walked right again. Riding wasn't freedom to her, it was a gamble with fate. Boone knelt then, bringing his massive frame level with hers, his knees creaking like old saddle leather. Up close, she saw the fine lines etched around his eyes, the faint scar snaking down his jaw like a riverbed gone dry. He smelled of sun-baked hay and pipe tobacco, a scent that wrapped around her like a worn blanket. Fragile ain't a curse, darlin'. It's just a startin' point. Thunder here's wild, 'cause life's made him that way, storms, fences, men with whips thinkin' they own the wind. But he trusts me. And I'll teach you myself. Ride the horse bare, no saddle, no reins, just you and the heartbeat beneath you. Feel the rhythm of the earth, and it'll carry you home. Eliza's breath hitched. Ride bare. The words echoed like a dare from the devil. Her father would have a conniption, Reverend Hawthorne, with his fire and brimstone sermons on obedience and the perils of the flesh. Womenfolk ain't meant for such recklessness, he'd thunder from the pulpit. Yet here was this stranger, this giant with hands that could crush a boulder, offering her the impossible, not just a lesson, but belief. She trembled, her small frame shaking as if the ground itself might crack open. "Why?" she whispered. "You don't even know me." Boone's eyes softened, holding hers with a steadiness that made the world tilt. Because I know what it's like to stand at the edge and feel the pull. And because your pa's praying for a miracle, but sometimes God sends a cowboy instead. He stood, extending a hand the size of a dinner plate. Tomorrow at dawn. I'll be here. She took it, her palm lost in his warmth, and in that touch, something shifted, a spark in the dry tinder of her soul. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of sweat and whispers. Dawn broke with Boone waiting by the corral, his silhouette a sentinel against the pink-streaked sky. He'd start simple, letting Eliza stand near Thunder, murmuring low nonsense to the horse while she stroked his flank, feeling the quiver of muscle beneath coarse hair. He's not a monster, Boone would say, his voice a soothing baritone. He's family. Listen to his breath, it's the same as yours when you're scared. Eliza marveled at Boone's patience, the way he'd lift her onto a mounting block without a grunt, his grip firm but never bruising. He was a mountain of a man, yet his touch was feather-light, guiding her foot into the stirrup with the care of a father braiding his daughter's hair. As the lessons progressed, Eliza glimpsed the man behind the myth. Boone shared stories over canteens of lukewarm water, tales spun like campfire smoke. He'd been a boy in Texas, orphaned young, raised by a Comanche elder who taught him that the land didn't break you, it revealed you. The war had stolen that wisdom, leaving him adrift in trenches where mud choked the stars. I rode bareback through no man's land once, he confessed one afternoon, as Thunder grazed contentedly nearby. No saddle, no hope, just me and a borrowed mare, dodgin' shells like they was raindrops. Got me thinkin', life ain't about holdin' on tight. It's about leanin' in. Eliza listened, her fears easing with each word. She told him of her own shadows, Mama's cough that rattled like autumn leaves, the bank man's cold letters demanding payment on a farm that yielded dust instead of wheat. Pa prays every night, but God's busy elsewhere, she said bitterly, plucking at a blade of grass. Boone chuckled, a sound like gravel under tires. God's always workin', Eliza. Sometimes through hands like these. He flexed his fingers, scarred and strong, and for the first time, she laughed, a bright, unguarded peal that startled a jay from the fence post. But kindness has its costs, and Boone's selflessness began to unravel threads Eliza hadn't expected. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the plains in hues of fire, she overheard her father confronting him at the church steps. Reverend Hawthorne, gaunt from worry, jabbed a finger at Boone's chest. You're fillin' her head with wild notions, Caldwell. She's a lady, not some bronc-bustin' harlot. And you, runnin' from your sins, ain't ya? I know you're kind. War broke you, and now you're breakin' my girl. Boone stood unmoved, rain beginning to patter on his hat brim. Reverend, with respect, Eliza's got fire in her veins. I'm just fannin' it. As for my sins, they weigh heavy enough without your judgment. He tipped his hat and walked into the downpour, leaving the preacher sputtering like a kettle left too long on the boil. That night, Eliza lay awake, the thunder of her heartbeat mirroring the storm outside. Boone's words echoed, leaning in. But what if leaning meant falling? She rose before dawn, slipping out to the corral in her nightgown, the mud sucking at her bare feet. Thunder stood in the shadows, a ghost in the mist. Heart pounding, she climbed the fence, whispering apologies to the horse as she draped herself across his back. No saddle, no guide, just raw instinct. Thunder shifted, and Eliza slid, tumbling into the muck with a cry that split the night. Hoofbeats answered. Boone burst from the gloom, scooping her up as if she weighed no more than a saddlebag. Fool girl, he growled, but his arms trembled, not from effort, but something deeper. Rain streamed down his face, mingling with tears she hadn't expected. You could have broken your neck. Why risk it alone? Because I have to be enough, she sobbed, clinging to his shirt. For Mama. For Pa. For me. He carried her to the barn, settling her on a hay bale, his giant frame folding beside her like a weary oak. In the lantern's glow, Boone's mask cracked. You are enough, Eliza. More than enough. They burst from the farmhouse like arrows loosed from a bow, Eliza astride Thunder's bare back, her skirts hiked scandalously high, Boone's massive form a steady anchor behind her. The Mustang sensed the urgency, his hooves thundering against the cracked earth as they tore across the plains toward Doc Harlan's place, 10 miles of sun-baked nothing, where mirages danced like cruel jests. Wind whipped Eliza's hair free, tearing pins like fragile dreams, and for the first time, fear wasn't a chain but a spur. Boone's arms encircled her waist, not caging but cradling, his chest a drumbeat against her spine. "Lean in," he roared over the gale, and she did, forward, into the rhythm of horse and heart, the world blurring to streaks of gold and shadow. The ride was a revelation, each stride stripping away layers of doubt. Eliza felt Thunder's power surge beneath her, not as a threat but a tide carrying her aloft. Memories flashed, Tommy's lopsided grin before the fall, Mama's lullabies soft as summer rain, Pa's prayers fierce as frontier justice. And Boone, his warmth seeping through her blouse, his breath hot on her neck. "You're flyin', darlin'," he shouted, pride threading his voice like sunlight through clouds. Laughter bubbled from her throat, wild and free, mingling with the Mustang's whinny. In that moment, profound truth unfurled, bravery wasn't the absence of tremble, but the choice to ride through it. They reached Doc Harlan's weathered cabin as dusk bruised the sky, thunder lathered and heaving but unbroken. The doctor, a wiry man with spectacles perpetually askew, took one look at Eliza, disheveled, radiant, and barked orders without question. "Hawthorne girl. What's the ruckus?" Boone lifted her down, his hands lingering a beat too long, then explained in clipped tones, "Fever, cough, the farm's desperation." Harlan nodded, packing his bag with grim efficiency. "Banks got your pa over a barrel, eh? Dust bowls eaten us all alive." The return journey tested them anew. Harlan rode double with Boone, the added weight turning Thunder's gallop to a determined lope. Night fell hard, stars pricking the velvet dome overhead like God's own map. Eliza's thighs burned, her body aching from the unyielding press of horseflesh, but exhilaration coursed through her veins. They talked in snatches, Boone of Elias, the boy whose laughter had lit the trenches like fireflies, Eliza of her hidden sketches, wild horses penciled in stolen moments, dreams Pa called frivolity. "You're an artist," Boone murmured, awe softening his rumble. "Seein' beauty where others see burrs." A twist came unbidden, halfway home, Thunder stumbled, a gopher hole betraying the faithful beast. He recovered with a grunt, but not before jolting Harlan's bag loose, vials shattering on the rocks, precious laudanum lost to the dust. "Damnation," the doc cursed, his face paling. Mama's medicine, irreplaceable in these lean times. Panic clawed at Eliza's throat, the high of the ride crashing like a wave on jagged shore. "We can't go back empty-handed," she whispered, tears hot on her cheeks. "It's all for nothin', Dot." Boone reined in gently, Thunder sidling to a halt under a lone cottonwood. Moonlight silvered the leaves, casting ethereal patterns on their faces. Harlan dismounted, muttering about alternatives, willow bark tea, prayers if it came to that. But Boone's gaze locked on Eliza's, stormy with resolve. "Nothin' ain't ever for nothin'," he said, sliding from the horse with a grace that belied his size. He knelt in the dirt, hands sifting the debris, salvaging what shards he could. Then, from his own saddlebag, wait, he had no saddle, only the lariat and a battered tin, he pulled a small vial, stoppered with wax. "Laudanum. From my kit. War leavins. Enough for her fever to break." Eliza stared, the unexpected gift hitting like a thunderclap. You've been carrying this all this time?" Boone's jaw tightened, vulnerability etching deeper lines. "For nights when the ghosts scream loudest. But tonight, it's yours. For her." He pressed it into Harlan's palm, the act simple yet seismic, an outpouring of selflessness from a man who'd hoarded his pain like gold. Harlan clapped his shoulder, gruff thanks masking emotion. "You're a good man, Caldwell. Roots or no. They pressed on, the vial a talisman against the dark. Dawn crested as they thundered into the Hawthorne yard, chickens scattering like confetti at a revival. Reverend Hawthorne met them at the door, hollow-eyed from vigil, Mama's form a fragile silhouette in the bed behind. Eliza tumbled down, legs wobbling, and flung herself into Pa's arms. "We got it, Pa. The doc. The medicine." What followed was chaos laced with grace, Harlan bustling in, Boone hauling water from the well, Eliza brewing tea with hands that still smelled of horse and hope. Mama stirred under the laudanum's mercy, color returning to her cheeks like roses after rain. Pa watched it all, his Bible forgotten on the sideboard, eyes tracing Boone's broad back as the giant stoked the stove. When the fever broke at midday, Mama's eyes fluttering open, her voice a weak, "My girl," the room exhaled as one. In the quiet aftermath, as Harlan departed with a promise to return, Reverend Hawthorne faced Boone in the dooryard. The sun climbed high, baking the earth, but tension hung thick as humidity. "I misjudged you," Pa said, extending a hand rough from tilling unyielding soil. "Thought you a wanderer, bringin' trouble. But you rode for us. Like the Good Samaritan hisself." Boone clasped it, his grip enveloping the preacher's like a vow. "Ain't no saint, Reverend. Just a man keepin' a promise." His eyes flicked to Eliza, standing in the doorway, her nightgown muddied but her spirit alight. To her. To Elias. To whatever ghost needs layin' to rest. Pa nodded, throat working. "Stay, then. The farm, we could use hands like yours. Not forever, if the wind calls, but for now." The invitation hung, a bridge over the chasm. Boone hesitated, the drifter's instinct warring with something new, belonging. Eliza stepped forward, the wooden horse carving clutched in her fist. "For Elias," she said softly, pressing it into his palm. "And for us. Ride with me, Boone. Bear. Always." Tears gleamed in his eyes, giant's tears, vast as the plains. He nodded, pulling her into a hug that lifted her feet from the ground, her laughter muffled against his chest. Reverend Hawthorne turned away, wiping his face, murmuring a prayer of thanks not to the heavens, but to the man before him. Word spread through Willow Creek like wildfire on dry grass. The Hawthorne miracle became legend, the preacher's daughter who tamed the mustang, the giant cowboy who tamed his grief. Neighbors arrived with baskets, cornbread still warm, jars of preserves glistening like jewels. Old-timers slapped Boone's back, calling him one of us, while children trailed Eliza, begging for bareback tales. The bank man even softened, granting an extension when Pa shared the story over coffee, Boone's quiet presence a testament to redemption's reach. But the true transformation bloomed in the quiet corners. Eliza sketched openly now, her drawings adorning the farmhouse walls, horses mid-leap, cowboys silhouetted against sunsets, a preacher with wings of wisdom. Mama mended, her cough fading to a memory, and she took to sitting on the porch, watching Eliza and Boone ride out at dusk, Thunder's coat gleaming like polished obsidian. "He's good for her," she'd say to Pa, who nodded, his sermons shifting from judgment to joy. "The Lord's handiwork ain't always in the clouds. Sometimes it's in the saddle." Boone stayed through harvest, his strength turning barren fields to bounty as rains finally came, meager, but enough. He taught Eliza more than riding, how to mend a bridle with twine and trust, how to face a nor'easter with chin up, how kindness was a currency richer than gold. One evening, under a canopy of stars thick as spilled milk, they sat by the creek, feet dangling in the cool flow. Thunder grazed nearby, a guardian in the gloam. "You changed me," Eliza confessed, leaning her head on his shoulder, brotherly now, but profound all the same. "From tremblin' to this." Boone chuckled, arm draping loose around her. "Nah. You were always the spark, darlin'. I just held the flint." He paused, voice dropping. "Elias, be proud. Of you. Of us." In the distance, coyotes yipped a lullaby, and Eliza felt it, the power of humanity, woven from threads of compassion.